I'm here talking to Siobhan Roberts about various people in the world of logic and mathematics. I just read a really interesting book about Gödel by Richard Thiessen.
Oh, right. I heard about it, yeah.
And I used to know all about Gödel, and I hadn't gone back into it for a while, so it was fun to have that refresh on my memories. There was a little paper that Gödel wrote, some considerations leading to the probable conclusion that the true power of the continuum is Aleph-2. And that was something I found in my mailbox at Rutgers when I was a grad student. And somebody at Xerox didn't put it there. And then I got really into it.
Right.
And
did you ever figure out who put it there?
It could have been my advisor.
Huh.
He was kind of a strange man. Eric Allentuck. But then I did a seminar on that little paper for the other grad students. And at that time I was taking a seminar at the institute that was run by Gaisi Takayuti. It was a set theory seminar. He was a fellow there, and we were just getting together once a week. And then I guess he told Gödel that I was working on this. So then that's when Gödel invited me to come see him.
Right.
Which was the high point of my young life. He was the guru.
Yeah.
It was a big deal. And then later it turned out that stuff he'd written didn't really work out. Solvay worked it all out. And in Gödel's collected papers, it wasn't really solid. There were things wrong with it. But meeting Gödel was the big deal. Because I was 23, something like that. It was the 60s, so he was the guru, he was the man.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
Those were the days, sort of second heyday of logic, I understand.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Cohen really kicked things off too with the forcing.
What year was that?
It was around, that was also very early, because Gödel had proved the consistency of the continuum hypothesis. And you wrote a little article in the New Yorker about this.
Really?
Didn't you?
Oh, in the New Yorker? Oh, well, I wrote, I thought you said he did. I need to look that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wrote an article last spring about a Gödel night course.
That's
night
right.
Course in
Yeah, you
Brooklyn.
were taking it. Yeah.
Which was quite a heady
Sounded like
affair,
fun.
despite the casual
Yeah.
locale. But yeah, I sort of let it all wash over me in waves, and I take in bits and pieces. But it's it's a steep learning curve.
It is. You can say that again.
And I had Conway was a good teacher, but I've probably dumped some of that.
Yeah. Yeah, when I saw that, I thought you were going to write a book about Gödel.
I sort of thought about it for a bit and asked around, and Dana Scott, for one, said that he didn't think there needed to be another book about Gödel.
Maybe not.
I think Juliet Kennedy disagreed. She thought it would be a great idea.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, I think there is a definitive sort of... Well, there's a definitive one out there.
There was one by a lady, Goldberg. It was...
I'm trying to remember.
I
spoke to... It's going to come back to me. I should get my phone out.
Thiessen refers to it. And I remember reading it, but Thiessen's book was really surprisingly good. It was just a little book.
It's short, yeah.
He just died, poor guy.
Yeah, I saw that when I was looking up the book.
He was here at San Jose State, so I knew him pretty well.
And so is that book, is it his life, or is it mostly his work, or a combination of...
Well, Thiessen wrote a longer book, a more complicated book about Gödel. That's sort of a professional level philosophy book about phenomenology, which has always confused me so much.
Yeah,
And but then he did this little book for a company that does Simply books, Simply Charlie.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, this is such a lightweight label. The book, I don't know how strong it'll be, but it had everything in there. And yeah, it's worth looking at. Yeah, but the forcing, that just happened around 1968 when Cohen proved the independence of the continuum hypothesis.
Right. John Dawson is the other.
Oh yeah,
biography.
that's quite a good book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But there's one by another lady, a woman.
Oh, Rebecca Goldstein?
That's who I'm trying to think
The
of.
Incompleteness, yeah.
Yeah. And that's not quite so much a pop science book. It's also a little more of a, I don't know, philosophical meditation, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's room for another one, certainly. But I think it's kind of cool that you're just veering off and doing Verena, because that's fresh and it's
unexpected. I think it,
yeah.
can be kind of unorthodox in certain ways. Because she wasn't, she didn't have a spectacular career, but she was definitely brilliant, and she was so passionate about what she was doing. She just kept doing it right up until the end. I mean, she had the Atlas of Finite Groups at her bedside in the hospice, I think, when she died. So
the Atlas of Finite Groups. I've seen that book. Yeah, it's
a massive red book.
Yeah, well, Conway liked that stuff a lot too.
Oh yeah, well that's his book. One of his books.
Oh, he wrote that book.
There's
with a bunch of other
four
guys.
authors, yeah.
Yeah, that was a big part when you described it. Yeah, that was never my bag.
Not for everybody.
Yeah, I like the infinite. Well, there's the famous line, the infinite case is easy, the finite will take hard.
Right. Indeed. So are you still dabbling in these waters, or what are you thinking about these days?
Well, I don't really do much mathematics. Well, when I came to San Jose State in '86, I started teaching computer science, because the department was math and computer science, because people didn't have degrees in computer science then.
Right.
And then either I could teach calculus, and do a logic course for grad students once every year or two, or I could just go and learn something new. And I said, I'll just do that. And so that's what I did for 20 years. I became a computer scientist. So I never took a course in it, but I taught pretty much all the courses, and I worked at Autodesk for a while with the pros and got a feel for that. And it was fun because it was, in math, when you can't prove something, then you're done. Or if you write a proof and there's a mistake, it's not worth anything. It's just nothing. And when you write a program, then even if you have a mistake, the program might do something, It's more of an empirical thing, computer programming. And the other thing is you're getting this feedback. This machine is showing you stuff. And it's so much easier than doing math. It's just no comparison.
I hadn't thought of that in that way, that there's a bit of an interaction.
Yeah, it's almost like a physical science. Because physics, you can always do an experiment and you'll get something, It's not like you work 2 years and you don't have anything. So yeah, I like that a lot. And I like the sort of, I got into the kinds of computer images, fractals I loved, and then there's these things called cellular-automata. Well, of course, Conway, the man. But then there's ones you can get that have more complicated states. Like that painting I did there is of a cellular-automata.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah. It's a reaction diffusion rule. I could show you the rule later if you want.
Yeah.
And so those, I really love
one
those.
of yours?
Those are Sylvia's paintings. Those are shells.
So you're both painters, my goodness.
Yeah, and our daughter's a painter too. That's Georgia.
Beautiful, yeah.
Yeah, and Isabel's an artist as well. Or my son is artistic, but not a painter. He makes his money running an ISP in San Francisco. It's like, there's very few independent ISPs.
Right.
Because it's all Comcast, AT&T. But San Francisco, they've got a lot of high tech, and then there are these freaky, quirky people there, and they don't really want to sign up with Comcast.
Right.
You know, the great Satan. So Rudy has a Wisp. He's got like 3,000 wireless antennas, so it's a wireless internet service provider.
Wow.
So that's what he does.
And what's it called?
Monkey Brains. Monkeybrains.net.
And how many of those exist out there? Are there many?
Wisps?
And internet or independent.
In San Francisco, there's really, I don't know if there's even one other independent one. It's just the monsters, the dinosaurs. And then there's Monkey Brains.
I wonder if there's a bit of he could probably expand, like, you'd think there'd be an appetite for
Well,
that
to some
elsewhere.
extent he's expanding.
Yeah.
But they go and put the antennas in themselves. He's got like 3,000 antennas on the roofs. And he did this funny thing. They needed every time, if you're a customer, he'll come and put a Wisp antenna on your roof. It looks kind of like a TV dish antenna. And then, but he'll also fix it up so that thing then becomes sort of a node in the network.
Right.
And in principle, the people that live in your building could, at that point, get Monkey Brains service too. And so it's sort of growing out. But then there was this gap where they had to move like a terabyte across a few blocks, and you can't bury you can't bury cable fiber, because that belongs to the big guys. It's all licensed, very complicated. So you got this crazy thing. It was like a Lebanese military infrared laser.
Oh my goodness.
Second hand or something, and that's what he uses to zap, the signal across a few blocks. He's quite a character, my son. There's a sort of this thriving bohemian scene in San Francisco, of course, and they have this thing called Dorkbot. It's called Dorkbot, people doing weird things with electricity.
Oh yeah.
And they meet about once a month, or maybe every 2 months. And
like what sort of weird things?
well, like Rudy might have given a talk there on his network and then waved around this laser, which is about, really very large, and pretended that it was turned on.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Or the Survival Research Laboratory. Do you know about them? Oh, that's this thing. There's this man called Mark Pauline, and he's been doing this since the 80s. He builds these fairly large, menacing robots, and they blow fire. And he would do these shows in the streets in San Francisco, like under a freeway ramp. I remember one we went to, they had a pile of burning pianos, and this very large robot just like going around on treads and just pounding on it, And then scattered all around were these things that appeared to be military bombs. They were like plastic explosives and printed, for frontline demolition purposes only. And we took a couple of them, and then we got scared. Like, I don't think we should set this off.
Really?
And then it turned out that was a prank of his. They were plaster of Paris. And then they were found all over the city the next day.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy. He lost his thumb and then replaced it with his big toe. They grafted it. Yeah, Mark Pauline, SRL.
Mark Pauline? Just developing my story list here.
Yeah, that you could definitely do some interesting stuff about that.
Also, Monkey Brain sounds like a good one.
But I don't remember exactly. We sort of went down a lot of levels there. Top up the stack, I don't know.
Yes, how do we get back? Well, what are you writing these days, or what are you doing?
Yeah, so I taught computer science at San Jose State, and all along I've always viewed my primary career as being a writer. That's what I wanted to do, I'm about to start my 40th book.
Wow.
And it'll be my 23rd novel.
Hmm.
And
That's incredible.
it's like snow, you know, a little every year.
Right.
And but I've been very persistent. I liked writing, and I'm sure you know what that's like. It's just satisfying. It's a craft. You're in there and you're marking it up and making it better. It's very pleasant. The world goes away.
Yeah.
You're in your space there. And I taught until my brother managed to retire when he was 58, and then that bugged me. So then I said, I've got to find a way to do that. And so then I did actually manage to retire when I was about 58 from teaching. And one thing about being a professor, the salary isn't really that great. There was, when they were having the internet bubble in the early 90s, I had this student. He's a lousy student. He was a B- student, maybe a C student. And he comes in and shows me he's got a $90,000 contract where he's going to be a Java programmer somewhere. And this guy was not a good Java programmer. And he said, well, I know I missed one of your tests, but why don't you mark me up to a B+ since I
Right.
But I didn't.
Jeez. Cheeky.
But anyway, the point I was getting at there, although the salary's not wonderful, it's okay. And of course the hours are great. You can't beat teaching. And then they still have a pension, which is becoming something of a rarity. So it made it possible for me to retire when I was, I don't know, about 60. And Schwarzenegger, I always liked having him as a governor because he was a science fiction character, you know. I mean, usually most politicians don't even know what science fiction is, you know.
Yeah.
So it made me happy that we had the Terminator. No matter what his politics were. And then they wanted to weed out some professors, so there's some deal they did where they would give you a golden parachute if you'd retire. They'd give you an extra year of service credit.
Right.
So I took that and I figured I could write a little bit faster. So I usually, for a long time I was writing about a book a year or a book every 2 years. And the thing is now I sort of came to the end of the road with my publishers. It's hard for me to sell a book to a commercial publisher now.
Oh, yeah.
The sales, you know, they're down. Do people, I don't know, how many people buy the new Rolling Stones record, you know? It's
Right.
I mean, I think the books are getting better, you know, but it's that the flash, the bloom is off the rose.
Right.
So, the thing is, right when this happened, Tor Books, they put out my autobiography, which was nice, Nested Scrolls. And then they were like, okay, we did this for you, Rudy, but now you've got a new novel. It's about Alan Turing and William Burroughs having a homosexual love affair. Which that book needed to be written, obviously. But it's just really pissing in the wind to try to. I mean, they're having a Turing Logic conference that year, and I couldn't really get them to give much play to that book.
Right.
But I mean, it's the best analysis I've ever seen of Turing's personality. I mean, I really looked into it. You know?
Right.
But the theory is that the British spies wanted to kill Turing. You know, you've probably heard that theory. And so they did. They came there, but then accidentally they killed this Turing's lover who was visiting from Norway. Turing had promised he wouldn't sleep with men, but then he parsed the logic, and as long as they weren't from England.
Right. Brilliant.
So, and then the other thing he was doing at the end was doing reaction diffusion cellular automata that would grow biological forms. And he has this sort of funny paper that, it's a long paper, and he did all the calculations by hand because he didn't have that kind of computer. And he computed this blob, which was the spot you'd see on the back of a brindle cow. It was a sort of funny picture. And so then I had the idea that, well, he'd be able to grow a face. So he got the face, his friend, who the British poisoned him with cyanide. And then he took a little scrap of the guy's nose and grew that guy's face. And he grew a copy of his face. And he put his face onto the dead guy, put the guy's face onto his. And then he figured he'd take off. And so he went to Tangier, where Bill was living at that time. And then they get in together, and Turing starts pushing this tissue, regeneration thing. He'll grow this glob of something, and sort of undifferentiated tissue, which was something Burroughs liked to talk about. It was one of his obsessions. And then I call them Scugs, S-K-U-G. And anyway, then they go to the U.S. and they get involved with Stanislaw Ulam and an H-bomb test. And it's a great book. But
I'll have to read it.
yeah, I can give you a copy.
I would love that.
And I couldn't publish it though, and because it's just too off the. See, SF has gotten a little more narrow.
Right.
With like fantasy too. It's fantasy used to be anything, and now it's Tolkien, something like Tolkien. And SF is, I don't know, SF is very amorphous. You do almost every week, not every week, but at least once a month, the front book on the Sunday Times Book Review is a science fiction book. But they never say it's science fiction.
Yeah.
Because it's visionary, whatever. There was one this last week too.
Was that Doctorow's book, Cory Doctorow, or?
No, because he's admittedly a science fiction writer. There's one by a woman, it was something about a space station. The review was by Vandermeer. It wasn't this week, it was last week. But yeah, they never put the word science fiction on them. It's one of those things, it's like, I don't know. It's like being an R&B musician, and then Elvis comes along or something, But anyway, but then the thing is, that happened right at the historical moment when it became very easy to self-publish. And so that saved my ass.
Right. So how logistically do you do that? I'm curious.
It's easier than it's easy and it's hard. I mean, it sounds easy, but then doing it, and I started from being a professor of computer science, so it shouldn't be that.
Right.
But basically, you get your book into a really nice format. Now, depending what level you want to go to, you can just be a Word doc, that you've really formatted sweetly. But then at some point, that's really not enough. Well, for the purposes of a Kindle book, that's enough. You can get it in a nicely formatted Word doc. Then you save it. You can actually submit the Word doc to KDP. Amazon has this page, I think Kindle Developer or something. And then they'll munge it and turn it into a Kindle book. And then it's listed, and you fill out some forms, and it's published. So it's really easy.
Oh, yeah.
The one thing that's slightly tricky is getting the table of contents. For whatever reason,
Yeah,
it's
so
something
bigger.
Yeah, but there's this product that's free called Calibre, Calibre, and that if you can make your Kindle at home. The Kindle format is proprietary, but you can make something called a Mobi format, which is essentially the same as the Kindle format. And so Calibre, and it doesn't like Word files, so you save the Word as an RTF file. Do you know that? It's called rich text format.
Right, yeah.
It's like generic word processors. People who don't like Microsoft, they'll be using that. And then, so Calibre, you can feed it an RTF, and it'll munge it right into a Mobi. And then you can actually copy the Mobi from your hard drive onto your Kindle. You plug your Kindle into the Kindle has a charging cable, and you can put that little USB thing at the end
Okay.
into the USB port on your computer,
Right.
and then it's just like an outside hard drive, and you can just drag the Mobi over there. Or you can sell the Mobi yourself. There's a site called eJunkie, and if you pay them $10 a month, you can upload the files that you want to sell there, and then people can go there and charge it on their MasterCard and download it. And of course, the real way to sell it is to put it on Amazon, which is 80% of the ebook business. The others are just fighting over the crumbs.
Yeah.
Nook is pretty much gone. iBook is still holding steady.
Yeah.
Since it's Apple, it's hard to put that book on iBook. You have to own a Mac, or you can't do it.
Right.
But then to make the paperback, that's another story. Because then a print book has to be formatted more nicely than a Kindle book. I mean, a Kindle book. The formatting almost doesn't matter, because on your Kindle, do you use a Kindle?
I've never used a Kindle, no. Doesn't appeal. I mean, initially it was,
I used to resist them, but
I resisted and it just didn't
Well,
appeal in the end.
now my eyes have gotten a little weaker. I like that I can set the font size.
Yeah.
I like that
Yeah.
a lot.
I can understand that.
There's also, right now I'm researching for the return to the Hollow Earth. And the book starts with a trip around Cape Horn. And so I'm reading Richard Dana's book, 2 Years Before the Mast. And there's these great quotes in there that I just want to, when you're historical books, sometimes I'll just take the quotes and just put them into my book. And then just edit them and munge on them. And if you highlight in Kindle, then you can just say export, and it'll email you an email with all the things you highlighted.
Right. Yeah, that's nice.
So you don't have to copy it.
Yeah.
But, and anyway, I just wanted to make the point with Kindle, the formatting, when you're reading it, you're free to set the font size. You can choose the font,
Yeah.
So what you as the Kindle producer do doesn't even matter that much.
Right.
Now the other thing is, if you want to do a print book, which is higher up the food chain, you have to use a program called InDesign. It's made by Adobe, or pay somebody to do this. And there's these sort of parasitic people that say they'll help you publish your book, and they might charge you 10 grand.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But you can buy InDesign for $500 and spend 7 months learning how to use it. If you're a computer science professor.
Retired.
Yeah, we retire lots of time.
Yeah.
But it is nice to know how to use it. It's power,
Yeah.
So I can make a really nice looking book now. And then I print it into a PDF file, which I guess you know what a PDF is.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and then I upload the PDF to Amazon. Has something called Create Space. And then you also make a cover. You use Photoshop and
Right.
screw with that in various ways. And then you've got a paperback. Maybe I've been turning girls here. Yeah, I thought this book would hit as a literary book. I was disappointed. It got like zero. Absolutely zero attention.
Yeah, it's hard to get attention, I find.
Well, if you blog, I have Twitter and Facebook, and I usually run a Kickstarter for a book like this.
Oh, yeah?
This is the first one I self-published, so I didn't realize that was the missing part of the puzzle.
Oh, yeah?
If you do the Kickstarter, you can make 10,000. You might be able to get more. You're better than
I don't
I
know.
think. You could be.
You might have a little bit more reach than me, Rudy.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Well, I bet you could get 7.
Interesting.
And that's
Yeah.
that takes care of the advance. I mean, if we're in the world of low advances, which usually your first book you can get a good advance, but then after a while they get a sense of
Yeah, if your track
who they're
follows
dealing
you
with.
around, yes. Yeah.
and
Droughted track.
Yeah. But Anyway, so I kept writing, even though I wasn't getting published, because I could publish myself.
Mm-hmm.
And just now, it looks like, I think, if the deal goes through, a publisher's going to reissue a bunch of these under their own imprint.
That's nice.
I think so. They won't use my design, which, after a while, you get into this control thing. You know?
Yeah. So you mean of the cover or the text too?
What I worry about is the font size.
Oh yeah.
That's kind of a thing of mine.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm 70, I guess.
Yeah, that's very accessible. It's nice. And how far along is your next book? Are you just starting, more or less, or?
Yeah, I've got it in my pocket. It's not this.
There it is.
Yeah,
Small scrap of paper.
yeah, scraps. I always like to have a scrap. See, and then I carry this around
Right.
and I mark it up.
Mm-hmm.
And I just finished marking.
And gradually it grows.
Well, I mark it up and then I type
Yeah.
that in.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get some momentum and I'll end up writing a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I always do a separate document, a notes document. And that's in there. I've been writing in the notes document since January. And, you know, about what should I do? I can't do this. I've never known how to write a novel at all.
I was going to ask if it was all pleasure for you, so you have the misery element as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the black spot.
Right.
Can I do this?
Mm-hmm. What am I doing? Why am I doing this?
Why am I doing this? Can I sell it? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
Who will read it? Nobody. All that good stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Was the Conway book your first book? I don't remember now.
No, I did. It was really a sequel of sorts to the Coxter book.
Oh, yeah.
Biography of Coxter. Those two are kind of a pair in that
Yes. Well, yeah.
Coxter led me to Conway, and they were close.
Well, the Conway book would have been more commercial, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Coxter is, that's an aficionado's geometer.
Yeah, he's a little more obscure, although it did sort of take off. I mean, it sold in, it was a different, that was, 2003, so.
Mm-hmm. You're
different
Canadian?
era. Yeah.
He's Canadian.
Well, he was British, and he came to U of T because he didn't get the position he was hoping for at Cambridge, so then he had a good offer at U of T.
Yeah.
But that book, I was surprised it sold in foreign markets on his coattails,
Mm-hmm. I should look
for
at
sure. I probably have an extra copy or somewhere that I could
nice.
send you,
Nice,
for sure.
Yeah, when I was writing about the fourth dimension, I was interested. Because he did, of course, cool things with that.
Yeah. He was the master. Up until 8, he said he could manage.
Mm-hmm.
Up till 8, and then beyond that, it was beyond him.
Oh, you can imagine 8-dimensional polyhedra.
Yeah.
Things like that, yeah.
In a way.
Yeah, that's what Wolfram says is if you wanted to, what would it be like to have your intelligence amplified? And he said it would be a matter of just being able to persist further in a line of thought. It might be the same type of thought, but
Right.
most people are going to quit it at 3.
Yeah. I tried 4 a little bit, but that was just about as far as I could go.
Yeah, that was my first love, the fourth dimension. When I first heard about it in science fiction books, I thought, this is really, I want to know about this.
And tell me about your work with James Glick's book, Chaos. What did you...
That was an interesting
there?
project. Well, I was interested in cellular-automata, and I'd gotten into them because we were living in Lynchburg, Virginia for, I think, 5 years before we moved out to California. And there I taught for 2 years, and then for 3 or 4 years I was trying to make it as a freelance writer.
Mm-hmm.
And I was scrounging around for magazine assignments. And that's when Wolfram actually first broke out. There's an article he had in Scientific American. And so I did an article on Wolfram, and then I went up to Cambridge, Massachusetts, and talked to the other cellular automata people. There are these two characters called Norman Margolis and Tommaso Toffoli, and they were great. They were maniacs. And they'd made this piece of hardware so you could run cellular automata really fast. And they had some programming language for it that it was crazy. It was reverse Polish language called Fourth. It was just, like, instead of writing A plus B, you'd have to write, I think it was AB plus. It was just insane, you know. And they'd write programs this way. So it was great. So then I got into cellular automata, and I got out here, and I started teaching computer science, and I got San Jose State to buy me one of these cards that these guys in Cambridge were making. It was called the CAM 6 board, and you could shove it into a slot of just the early IBM PC, you know, like one of the first models, and then you get really fast CAs on your screen. Now we can get them without using the accelerator board, but then we didn't. And so I went to this conference that they had every year. It was called the Hackers Conference.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that.
And yeah, you would like it there. Though it's, well, probably not what it used to be. This was like the second one. I think the first one might have had to do with Stephen Levy's book. I think maybe that sparked it. I can't quite remember. But anyway, John Walker from Autodesk was there. And it was just sort of a party, you know. We stayed up all night. I was smoking pot and drinking, and all these crazy hackers were just doing these incredibly strange things, you know, and showing them the cellular automata. And Walker liked them. And then he was like, I bet I could do this in software without an accelerator board. And he's like I don't know, he's like the Obi-Wan Kenobi of programmers. He wrote AutoCAD, so he helped found the company Autodesk. So he wrote a software version of it, and so then I basically went on leave from San Jose State and worked at Autodesk for 3 or 4 years. And Walker made this product called CA Lab for Cellular Automata Laboratory. And these days you can't really sell programs like that. People expect to get them for free online. But there was this window when hobbyists were looking for cool things to put on their PC. And they sold some of them. You know, it wasn't a huge success, but they sold enough, so then they said, well, let's do another one. And Walker was gung-ho. He said, well, let's have the Autodesk Science Library, and we'll have a series of programs. And then James Glick's book had just hit then, and it was great. It's a wonderful book. And so then I sort of knew Glick a little bit, because he'd been I'd gone to a conference in Santa Fe at Los Alamos. I think it was the first Artificial Life conference. I think Glick was there. Or they also had some cellular automata conferences there. It was cool. And that was before the Santa Fe Institute. They were sort of sponsored by the Los Alamos National Labs. Anyway, so then we had the idea, well, let's do software to go with Glick's Chaos. And we approached Glick, and he liked the idea. And at this time, Windows didn't exist. And we weren't really into Mac programming. So we did it as just a DOS program on the PC. Where the DOS programs, maybe you've never even seen them, they're just horrible. You have a black screen and there's a command line. Though in a way, a Unix screen looks like that. But you fire it up, and we get into graphics mode. And we did the Lorentz attractor and fractals and strange attractors and magnets and pendulum. That was a good one. That's this thing where if you put, just like those toys they had, you put like 3 magnets down there, and then you have a little pendulum bob, and you swing it. It just does this, you know, incredibly chaotic. It never settles down. So I went through Glick's book basically and found like 8 different things in there that I could imagine writing software demos of.
Right.
So I wrote the thing is I hardly knew how to program. I just started teaching, and I didn't even know what I didn't know. I was so ignorant.
That's the best state to be in, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would write these programs and they would work, so, they'd be buggy. And then Autodesk got another guy who was a professional programmer. He ended up writing the code that eBay used, I think, unless I'm mistaken. So he did well there. But he was at Autodesk then, and he sort of didn't like me. His name was Josh Gordon, because he thought, he wasn't a guy who'd done, many programmers didn't actually go to college, they just started doing it.
Yeah.
And so he didn't like that I was a professor.
Little did you know.
And I was really fulfilled his worst images because I was a professor, and then I barely could program, which, he could program like the piano. But we got it worked out. We got it sorted out. And it was a nice program. And Glick was pretty happy with it. But then as soon as we issued it, then he's like, well, now I want you to do a Windows version. And everyone's like, no. This was so hard. And Autodesk lost money on that program because there's this thing, they had this division called Tech Pubs with like dozens of people. And they started working on the manual too soon because we were still revising the manual. And it was sort of exploratory program. We didn't really know at least I didn't know what the features of the programs would be because I was developing them. Again, I really had no idea what I was doing. And then so the Tech Pubs people kept having to do revisions, and they clocked, those are billable hours within the company's economy. So they supposedly cost them $100,000 to make the manual, but
Wow.
so the balance on it didn't look good. So the Autodesk didn't do any more science. But Glick, I saw Glick, got to hang around with him a little. I liked him. He's a very intelligent guy.
Yeah, he's a lovely guy. Got to know him a bit
And then
over the course of the writing.
yeah, the Chaos Manual I wrote most of it actually, and it didn't exist in any form you could see online. And also the Chaos software, I had it online, but it was a little hard to use it because you have to run this thing called DOSBox, which is you can run it on a Mac if you want to. So it makes a sort of fake DOS world, and then you can run Chaos inside there. And so, but then I got all gung-ho, and there's this thing called GitHub, where developers put up software that they want to share. And so you put the source code and the executable there, and it's sort of more legit than just having it on your own site. So it's Git, like GIT, like I'm going to get some. So I did the GitHub version of Chaos, and I checked with Glick. I'd always worried he wouldn't let me put the book online because they gave him the copyright to it, but then he was actually very happy to have it be out. So that's something I just did a month or two ago.
Oh yeah. Wow. That's what lives on.
So yeah, Chaos lives. I think about Chaos a lot. I reread Glick's book, and I'd forgotten how it's really one of the best science books I've ever read. I just can't believe how good it is.
It is a beautiful book.
Yeah. And over the years I've gotten to know a lot of those people in there, and it's cool. I've been thinking about Chaos, like the news, yesterday or day before yesterday about Trump firing Comey. And then the contradictory stories and the motives and how the Democrats hated Comey, but now suddenly they're defending him. It's just so chaotic,
Yeah.
It's like the magnet pendulum, and it's just and you totally can't track. And that makes me happy when the politics gets chaotic, because as long as things are going according to plan, we're screwed. Whose plan,
Right.
So
But it sort of seems like we're screwed now too.
there's hope if there's chaos. If there's
That
chaos,
something could break out of the...
yeah.
Right.
If it's chaotic, there's some hope. There's chaos is life. There's this whole thing in the study of artificial life where, a crystal is dead, a gas. You probably know this thing. It's this whole spectrum. Christopher Langton calls it the edge of chaos. So if you have a system that's like a checkerboard or a crystal, it's not doing anything interesting.
Okay, yeah.
People's notion who don't really know much about computers thinks that's what computers are always like, just very predictable. And then if you have, just random fuzz, like static on your TV or just gas molecules, it's not very interesting because it's sort of the same. It's just blah, blah. And then, but there's a sort of, you can get a numerical measure of how disorderly it is. And there's this zone in the middle. It starts being, rather than being repetition, it might be doubly periodic and more complicated. And then there's this place where it starts to get really cool. And that's living processes are all there. And society's that way. Everything in the world that's good is there. Because it's like the Goldilocks thing,
Right.
And so if Trump was getting his way all the time, it'd be horrible.
Yeah.
And you don't want to have anarchy, where people might run into my house and kill me, just so they could take my silver, So there is this.
Yeah. It sort of reminds me, I was just in Berkeley at this 60th anniversary conference of the Logic Group. And so I just sort of by happenstance on the first day encountered fuzzy logic, which is the, not the binary classical 0 and 1, but all the gradients in between.
Yeah.
Which is sort of similar, and it's interesting. There was sort of this camp, and people were saying, "Oh, that's insulting to bring that up." And in this context, I mean, that's not what we do, and it's too fuzzy. But then, sure enough, the second day, the final, the finale talk was Ron Fagan from IBM, and he's talking about his Fagan algorithm, which was inspired by fuzzy logic. Yeah.
They've made it. Yeah, it used to be considered like a toy that didn't do anything, and real logicians look down on it.
Yeah, I think they still do to some extent.
Yeah.
Today.
Well, it's like they call Boolean valued logic, and they feel better about that.
Right.
It's the same thing, but it sounds better.
But the fuzzy logic does seem to be of the moment in a way. Like there's just this uncertainty and...
Well, the whole neural net thing is really big too. That seems to be the future of AI. That do you remember those pictures that were in vogue 2 or 3 months ago of things that would have eyes all over them?
No, I somehow missed that. Don't spend enough time on Twitter, clearly.
There's this thing that Google developed called Deep Dreams, and they had something that would... It looked at all the images on the web, and they did some gnarly AI logic on them. So it would do pattern recognitions on things that weren't patterns, Like if you were really high and everything was looking like a face to you. So it's a program like that. It'll just look at anything and it'll say, "Oh, that's a face," and then it'll tweak it up so you can see it.
Right.
But that's using these multi-layered neural nets that are becoming more popular. That's why I mentioned that.